Welcome back, everyone, to the Law of One series, episode 13. Today, we're doing a special Q&A video. I posted up on Instagram this week for you guys to submit some Law of One questions. And thank you to everyone who submitted a question. I did get over 100 questions, so unfortunately, I had to choose the top 10 or so to answer in the video today. But we're going to get into the questions. And before we do that, I just want to say, as my typical disclaimer, this is just going to be today my own personal opinions and reflections of the raw material. You should always, of course, read the text for yourself, come to your own conclusions. Today, I'm just going to be offering up my points of view on your questions. So we'll go ahead and dive into it. The first question comes from @Ryan Bohannon, 1996. Ryan asks, will the earth have its own soul complex made up of all souls living right now one day? So what Ryan's asking about here is the idea of the social memory complex. And I pulled up a quote for you, Ryan, where Ra addresses this a little bit in session 11. But essentially the idea is, the answer is kind of a yes and no, because the earth already is a social memory complex in a sense, but we are a disoriented social memory complex, you could say. We aren't yet united with one will and intention for service to others, which is kind of the prerequisite. So right now we're a bit disconnected from one another, but as time goes forward and we continue evolving into fourth density consciousness, Earth will become a planetary civilization of one mind called a social memory complex. And that social memory complex will not necessarily contain all souls incarnate upon Earth at this time, because some of these souls may choose the negative path. Some of these souls may choose to incarnate on another third density planet if they feel like Earth wasn't conducive enough for their third density learning. They might choose another planet. So there's different reasons why souls may not stay within a social memory complex, but those who do and continue evolving will be a part of that one planetary complex at one point. And the quote that I pulled is from session 11, question 17, which asks, at what stage does a planet achieve social memory? Ra says, a mind-body-spirit complex becomes a social memory complex when its entire group of entities are of one orientation or seeking. The group memory lost to the individuals in the roots of the tree of mind then become known to the social complex, thus creating a social memory complex. The advantages of this complex are the relative lack of distortion in understanding the social beingness and the relative lack of distortion in pursuing the direction of seeking, for all understanding distortions are available to the entities of the society. So Ra sort of touches on this idea in other sessions that the social memory complex is a phenomenon of the fourth density. It begins to really evolve in the fourth density because, as they say, it requires a one-pointed seeking and orientation of the whole complex. And fourth density is the density of oneness and unity. So over the next few decades and centuries, as we move into a fourth density consciousness and extinguish the third density consciousness of being separate from one another, that phenomenon of social memory will begin to evolve. But to answer your question, not every soul incarnate now on Earth will be a part of that social memory complex. Only those who choose to stay on planet Earth in their reincarnations will be evolved in that planetary civilization. The next question comes from @Divya Kakar Official. Sorry for butchering that, Divya. Divya asks, what is beyond being? If one realizes their true self in third density itself, what happens in higher densities? So third density is exclusively for the purpose of the soul choosing the positive or the negative polarity. So if you're a native third density soul, meaning you're not a wanderer from a higher density, the whole point of you being here is to be refined in the fire, the catalyst of polarity, and being forced to choose positive or negative. Once you make that choice, then you're eligible for a fourth density graduation in your next incarnation. So typically we think of the densities model as beginning from first density and finishing in seventh density and then merging back with the source. But we could also think of it in the reverse, right? If we imagine the one infinite creator wanting to experience itself, okay, the one infinite creator is all that there is, yeah? And it is infinite. There's an infinite variety of ways it can experience itself. So, what the source does, from maybe its perspective, we could say, is it strips away, seemingly strips away in the illusion of Maya, the universe, strips away a little bit of its infinity and projects its consciousness into the seventh density. We call that the gateway density. Not much is known to us about what seventh density entails from the raw material. But then, as the creator projects its consciousness even further into space and time, further away from its true nature of infinity, it projects into the sixth density of consciousness. So it strips away a little bit of the seventh density, right? And then sixth density being the density of unity. As the creator projects its consciousness further away into space and time, it goes into the fifth density. So almost you could imagine like a funnel getting narrower as it goes. Fifth density strips off the layer of unity. After fifth density, it projects into fourth density. Fourth density strips off the layer of wisdom and light, which is fifth density. And then as it projects deeper into space and time, the illusion, it goes to third density, which means it strips away the love aspect of its nature, or the awareness of love, into self-awareness, which is third density. Projects itself even further into space and time down to second density, stripping away self-awareness. And then from second density, it projects the farthest it can go, which is stripping away growth and movement, is second density. Stripping that away, it's left with pure naked beingness. And that's what we call the first density of consciousness. And that's when the soul begins the return movement back to the creator. So it sort of projects itself into space and time. You could imagine like a slinky until it gets as far away from itself as it can possibly go, down to its very naked essence of pure beingness. And then it begins that return movement, which is the soul's evolutionary journey. And that's what each one of us is doing right now. Each one of us is an individual return movement of the one infinite creator knowing itself. So it's not as if third density, like if you achieve self-realization here in third density, it's like, well, I did it. I realized that I'm the creator and now the journey's over, right? The creator is infinite. So just because you have the experience, oh, I am the one infinite creator, really that's just the beginning of the journey in a lot of ways. That's where the soul is finally able to choose its polarity and evolve through 4, 5, 6, 7, and into the eighth density, merging back with the source. And that entails things we can't even comprehend from this relative plane that we're on right now. So the creator being infinite means that this journey really never ends. The creator just continues to project itself into space and time and having that new, fresh realization of what it is like. And it's doing that for infinity. So I hope that answers your question. That's kind of the best I can do with that one. Next question comes from @Aaron Isla, who asks, Ross stated service to self path skipped fourth density, but service to others evolves through fourth density. Which is likely happening now? So there's a bit of a error in the question. Ra does not state that service to self skips fourth density. The service to self path skips the fourth chakra, the fourth energy center. Essentially, Ra states that the service to self path sees love as useless and meaningless. And so it doesn't utilize the heart chakra, the green ray energy center. It makes use primarily of the three primal rays, the red, orange, and yellow. And of course, especially the fifth and sixth chakra of wisdom and psychic abilities. That's kind of the area that the service to self path hangs out in and works on developing its powers in. So we are a fourth density positive planet, which means that we are evolving into a fourth density positive social memory complex. But again, that takes many, many years of evolution to go through. The next question comes from @AngelHair0, who asks, can we reincarnate on another planet? Is it possible we've all been to other planets? It's certainly possible that any particular one of us has been incarnated on another planet in a previous lifetime. That would be assuming that we are wanderers, right? There is a rare chance that those of us who are third density native, meaning we haven't actually graduated to a fourth density yet, could have come from another third density planet. But Ra does state that that's somewhat of a rare occurrence. Typically, a soul will keep incarnating on the same planet because it becomes very karmically involved on that planet and in that civilization. So it's definitely not possible that every single person on the planet has been on another planet. But there are those of us here who are wanderers from other star systems and so forth. And yes, you can absolutely reincarnate on another planet if your soul chooses or your higher self chooses with you that it's going to be of better service to your evolution to try out another planet, which does happen if people miss the harvest from third density to fourth. They may choose another third density planet at that point, but that's also somewhat of a rare occurrence. So yeah, there's a bit of a mishmash of everything, you could say, a melting pot. Next question comes from Captain Supreme, who asks, why are some things explained in such a complex way? Why not like explaining math to a kid? Now, this is a really good question. The problem a lot of people have with the Ra material is that it's really intellectually heavy, right? A lot of big, complicated words are being used from Ra in this channeling, and I think it's important to know why. So Ra, being a positive sixth density memory complex, is going to be wanting to honor free will in every way possible while communicating with others, not so as to infringe on their free will and depolarize themselves. They need to communicate this information in the most accurate possible way. And they express this in the Ra material many times, that it is their wish and desire to delineate this material in the least distorted way possible. And to do that, they have to use what they believe are the most accurate words available in the English language, which means a lot of the words they use are words that we aren't super familiar with or use commonly in day-to-day speech. But there's another reason for that, which is important to know, which is that those who are truly ready for this material will be able to understand it and gain from it and learn from it. And those souls who maybe aren't, advanced enough yet to really digest a lot of that material, it just won't really mean anything to them. And so no free will is infringed on in either situation. But in trying to cater to the lowest common denominator, there's a lot more opportunity for distortion with words that are more open-ended and simplistic and more easily misunderstood or misconstrued. And that's not going to be what Ra, what their intention was in communicating, right? They want to make this very accurate. So for that reason, it's helpful to appreciate the language used in the Ra material, because it shows the desire for purity on behalf of Ra in the way that they were communicating. So I appreciate that question. The next two questions come from the same user @anti-independent. The first question was, what is an example of serving others using love imbued with wisdom? So I think kind of what we just touched on is a good example of that. The nature of love simply is to radiate itself, to serve unconditionally. So love makes no thought of itself. It just gives. And that can lead to some propensity for martyrdom and things like that when that love is not imbued with wisdom. Wisdom, we could say, is the most accurate way or efficient way for love to be utilized. Love doesn't think about those things, it just gives itself. It's the job of wisdom to utilize love in the most accurate way possible. And so, the way that Ra channeled this material and using the most accurate words available is actually a great example of love imbued with wisdom. it wouldn't be wise of Ra to just, cater to the lowest common denominator and perhaps give a lot of concepts that could be easily misunderstood or distorted. There's less room for distortion when more accurate terms are used. But now another example in like practical day-to-day living might be the idea of, having a friend, let's say, who is going through a tough life lesson. Let's say you have a friend who's in like an abusive relationship, right? So of course, love itself wants your friend to stop suffering. It wants to alleviate their suffering. And that compassion wants to reach out to be of service. But you can't do so by simply telling them to leave their abusive partner, because free will doesn't tell somebody what to do, right? If you want to honor someone's free will, you have to allow them to come to that conclusion on their own. So love imbued with wisdom might offer its perspective, make a clear distinction between the options available, things of that nature, and allow your friend to make their own decision based on where their own state of consciousness is. Because people can only behave out of their state of consciousness. So if somebody hasn't learned the lesson adequately enough to love themselves, to set healthy boundaries with other people, to show them what love looks like, you can't force that upon them. And wisdom would not utilize love in that way. Now, the next question that this person asks is, how exactly is fourth density compassion seen as folly through the lens of fifth density wisdom? And it's not that compassion itself is seen as folly. The passage I believe that you're referring to is the passage where Ra is talking about martyrdom. And I believe they use the example of Christ in that passage. And Christ's sacrifice on the cross, Ra says something like, the fifth density sees martyrdom as a bit of folly or foolishness, simply in the fact that it's not maybe the most efficient way to be of service. But at the same time, fifth density wisdom sees the purity of that love and compassion. And in the case of Christ, giving that total self-sacrifice for mankind, for his message that Christ was trying to deliver, that you are all one with God, chose to be a martyr to deliver that message. And fifth density wisdom still looks at that and appreciates and sees the beauty of the purity of love. So it's not like, oh, stupid fourth density beings, It's more just like, well, there's a more accurate way available, but each being is in their own level of evolution. And so whatever means by which that entity chooses to offer love is in that sense still pure, although maybe not the most efficient way it could be utilized. Next question comes from at Karen Lowe 39. Karen asks, does the harvest/graduation to fourth density happen within a human's lifetime or after death? So this is a great question because it's something I do notice a lot of confusion on. And the key distinction is that a soul can absolutely, doing the inner work on themselves, ascend to a fourth density state of consciousness within a third density lifetime. So you can still be living within a third density yellow ray body as we are now, but ascend to a fourth density state of consciousness. And then upon the ending of that incarnation, your soul is going to be harvested or graduate into a fourth density incarnation, a fourth density lifetime. So you could sort of liken it to a PhD student who is going through their final exams and writing their final dissertation papers or whatever. And let's say, the day before they take their test, they're a incredible straight A student. They're going to pass all their exams. They're going to crush their dissertation. They just haven't gone through the final steps yet. Upon the following day, the teacher grades the tests, reads the dissertation, A+, stamp of approval. Here's your PhD. You're now officially a doctor. That's just sort of the official documentation, yeah? But the day before, there really was no difference, right? That student was still a still adequately was a doctor for all intensive purposes. They just hadn't gone through the final requisite steps for that yet. So you could say the ending of the incarnation is when the life review happens and when the higher self reviews the, Ra talks about they read the crown chakra violet ray readout to see what state of evolution is this consciousness at. And if it's achieved a fourth density vibration, a green ray vibration, higher self says, all right, this soul is now eligible for a fourth density lifetime. So you graduate to the next density. So yes, you can absolutely ascend to fourth density now and live and abide in that state. And upon the death of the physical body, your next incarnation, you can incarnate into a fourth density green ray body, whether on this planet in the future or perhaps another fourth density planet. The next question comes from at Chad Guzzi4. Chad asks, does the law of one provide any methods to enlightenment like Ramana Maharshi's self-inquiry? And the answer is yes. Ra does give a few practice exercises that the spiritual seeker can do to begin expanding their consciousness to fourth density, which is what we call enlightenment. Enlightenment is essentially unity consciousness, fourth density consciousness of love and oneness. And so in that passage, Ra gives 4 exercises. In session 10, question 14, Ra says, exercise 1. This is the most nearly centered and usable within your illusion complex. The moment contains love. That is the lesson/goal of this illusion or density. The exercise is to consciously seek that love in awareness and understanding distortions. The first attempt is the cornerstone. Upon this choosing rests the remainder of the life experience of an entity. The second seeking of love within the moment begins the addition. The third seeking powers the second, the fourth powering or doubling the third. As with the previous type of empowerment, there will be some loss of power due to flaws within the seeking in the distortion of insincerity. However, the conscious statement of self to self of the desire to seek love is so central an act of will that, as before, the loss of power due to this friction is inconsequential. So what Ra is touching on here is this idea that our first job is to perceive love in every moment. Every moment, every experience, especially with other selves, is an opportunity to seek love in that situation. How can I bring love to this moment, to this other self? And what Ra is saying is that the first time that dawns upon the conscious mind is the beginning of that fourth density vibration, the opening of the green ray. When the will is centered upon how do I bring love to this other self, that can only happen if the green ray has begun to open, right? And each time that the entity seeks love in the moment, it has a doubling effect of the previous seeking. And there is some distortion, Ra says, based on the sincerity or insincerity of that seeking, but ultimately it's inconsequential because the will to seek love itself is the primary mover of fourth density consciousness. So as long as that is your intention, you're evolving, you're expanding into fourth density. Now, Ra gives 3 other exercises you can do to expand your consciousness. And the second one is to essentially look at other selves, other people, and see them as the creator. Now, fourth density is unity consciousness, where the creator is beginning to learn, or we could say remember, that it is everything, that the whole universe is itself. So you must begin recognizing other selves as yourself. That is me having a different experience. So bringing yourself to that recognition is another way of opening the green ray and expanding your vibration or frequency to a fourth density frequency. So really, you can almost do this in your imagination. What would it be like if I was born in that body and all of their pain was my pain, their experiences were mine? I would think and behave exactly as they are. And that's what opens the heart to see others with compassion and with forgiveness, which is a big part of fourth density love. The third exercise, Ra says, is to see yourself as the creator, self-realization. And I believe Ra says, exercise 3 Gaze within a mirror. Behold the creator. Simple, right? Practice seeing yourself not as a person, not as a body, but I am the one infinite creator, dreaming of this person, dreaming this body. The body's impermanent. What I am is eternal. That's exercise 3. Exercise 4 is the same kind of idea, but it's to gaze at creation, Mother Nature, the universe at large, and see the creator. Recognize that this whole vast world is the creator's mind expressing itself. That's yet another way to expand yourself into a fourth density vibration. Unity and love and oneness is really the focus of fourth density. So any way in which you can see that in creation, whether in nature itself, whether within yourself or within others, is going to be expanding you to a fourth density vibration. So love that question. Thank you for that, Chad. The next question comes from @Will Connolly, who asks, is Ra from the Law of One the same Ra as the sun god of Egypt? Because that doesn't add up with Venusian. Yes, Will. Ra talks about this in the first 5 sessions, I believe, but the idea is that when Ra visited Egypt about 11,000 years ago, I believe, they weren't named Ra. They didn't know themselves as Ra, but that was the name the Egyptians gave to them based on their own mythology. So they perceived Ra as the sun god that they call Ra. So Ra is presenting themselves to Earth in the raw material here based upon the name that Earth gave them 11,000 years ago. But to your point, yes, Ra themselves, they are the planetary civilization of Venus from 2 billion years ago. So they don't go by the name Ra, but as a concession to our planet, they refer to themselves as Ra, and they sort of go into that detail in the first 5 sessions of the raw material, if you want to learn more about it. The next question comes from Faith Over Fear _fitness5, who asks, what does it mean to serve others versus self? I thought you had to start with you first, with yourself first. So this is another concept that Ra touches on many times in the Law of One, that to serve yourself is to serve others, and that all selves are serving the creator. Even the service to self polarity is being of service to the creator. They are simply giving the creator a different angle to know itself through, which is the negative polarity. And this is why the positive path does not fight the negative polarity or see them as invalid in any way. The positive path honors the negative entity with every bit as much as it would honor a positively polarized entity. The universe needs contrast, right? Everything needs contrast in order to be known. So in that sense, the negative polarity is doing us a favor by allowing us to be on the positive path so that they can take the negative path, which is truthfully the more difficult path, to give us that reflection. So honor and love in all things is of utmost importance to the Law of One. Now, when you are serving others, true service to others is the act of worshiping the creator within them. So, it's the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would wish to do to yourself. If you want to know yourself as the one infinite creator, then again, you must see other selves simply as a different extension of you. No less you than this physical body is, right? So to serve them is serving you in that sense of opening your perception of self to expand and experience yourself in a larger way, in a more divine way. So the fourth density being polarizes their vibration, evolves through service to others exclusively. And I pulled up a quote here from session 46, where Ra talks about this idea, saying that there is very little work in consciousness in fourth and in fifth densities compared to the work done in third density. The work that is accomplished in positive fourth is that work whereby the positive social memory complex, having through slow stages harmoniously integrated itself, goes forth to aid those of less positive orientation which seek their aid. Thus, their service is their work, and through this dynamic between the societal self and the other self, which is the object of love, greater and greater intensities of understanding or compassion are attained. So essentially, if it is my will to experience the positive polarity of the Creator, if that's what I want, then it is my will to serve others. And in doing so, I spiritually polarize. I get to evolve. My consciousness expands. My self expression expands. So, yes, in that sense, to serve others on the positive path is to serve the self. Now, I created a little chart for you to show you an interesting dynamic within the seven densities that shows how there's sort of this alternating pattern between each density where the orientation of that density alternates between self oriented and other oriented. So it's as if the creator oscillates between knowing itself in the form of self and other, self and other. And that dynamic changes through each density. So in the first density, it begins with self, which is just pure being. So there's no other self yet to know. Consciousness experiences the state of pure beingness. In second density, consciousness expands to growth and movement, which means it's knowing something essentially other than itself, which in the second density is the environment. Once consciousness experiences the environment in the form of plants, insects, animals, and so forth, it slowly evolves into self-awareness, which is third density. And then the orientation goes back to knowing the self, which is knowing the self as being separate from the environment. After consciousness goes through that experience, it begins to know itself through the other, which is the other self, the vision of oneness, the vision of unity. So consciousness experiences itself through others. And then consciousness expands to the fifth density, which is the density of self-knowledge or wisdom. And Ra explains that in the fifth density, entities spend most of their time in solitude and silence, learning the ways of wisdom and self-knowledge, which then expands to the sixth density, which is the density of unity, the density where consciousness harmonizes all things within the universe together. So it knows itself through the otherness of the universe and the contrast between love and wisdom becoming one. So the sixth density is the density of the law of one. And then consciousness evolves into the seventh density, which is the knowledge of self as the creator or becoming the creator. And this is the gateway density. So we see this really interesting oscillation between self and other, which truthfully is just a different prism through which the source is getting contrast. Ultimately, there's only one self, there's only the creator. So to serve others is to serve myself. To serve myself is to serve others. It's ultimately one and the same. Last question for today comes from at Eli Whosound. At Eli Whosound. Eli asks, what is the most efficient way to fully activate the heart/green ray energy? And we touched on this question a bit already, but I included this question because typically what people are really asking when they ask this is more like, how do I not come back to third density again? How do I make sure that I evolve to fourth density so that I can go on to the next phase of my soul's journey? Which is fair enough, yeah? Third density is very difficult density. In fact, Ra says it is about 100 times more difficult than any other density in terms of the catalyst available here. So that is actually a very valid and important question for us to ask. How do I end my suffering? How do I escape this third density experience? The answer is see love in the moment. Just as Ra touches on, that is the only task you need to be concerned with if you want to ascend to a fourth density consciousness. Now, even having the awareness, I am a soul on an evolutionary journey, and I have come to this planet in this lifetime to evolve my consciousness. Even just having that awareness itself is going to make it very likely that you're going to be eligible for graduation. Because what that means is now all of your life experiences are no longer being overlooked from that lens of separation and survival of third density. But now you're beginning to perceive everything through that lens of, how do I grow from this? How do I use this catalyst to expand my consciousness? And that's when you start seeing love in the moment, when you want to see it. So when you want to escape this illusion of separation, you will begin to see love. So it's the vision of oneness, the vision of unity, that allows our consciousness to increase its frequency to a fourth density state. You can do that through self-contemplation as the creator, seeing others as the creator, seeing the universe at large as the creator, serving others. Wherever you can bring more love and unity to creation in your perception, because it's already there in actuality, in your perception is how you will expand your consciousness. So it's really simple in theory. It's just about doing the work, right? When the rubber meets the road, when someone betrays you, attacks you, offends you, that's the greatest opportunity to expand your consciousness. Say, oh, thank you, other self, for providing me this amazing opportunity to catapult myself into a fourth density state. Let me choose forgiveness. Let me choose compassion. Let me have love. Let me not see you as separate. Those opportunities that life provides us should bring nothing but gratitude out of us, because I'm not the separate self that was attacked. I'm not this individual body that was abandoned or abused or betrayed or whatever. All of that is ultimately a dream, an illusion, for the purpose of allowing me to realize I am love. I am love and light. I am the one infinite creator. We realize that by forgiving others, by having compassion and seeing people with love. So that concludes our Q&A. Thank you again to everyone who submitted. Sorry for those of you whose questions I didn't get to, but I'm sure we'll do this again soon. And it was a lot of fun. So hope you guys enjoyed that, and much love. Namaste.